Andy, how are you, sir?
Very good, Seth. How are you doing today?
Just great to have you. I'm fine. I was thinking, I have you on here about once a week or so, and you're so good to do it. And I tell my listeners and callers it's so important that they call in because it's so important we feel that we understand and know that we're not alone. And when I hear from you, Andy, it's just a dose of common sense, and it helps me get through the rest of the week. I know it does with our listeners too, knowing they're not alone and they have a voice in Washington and you that speaks to their common sense, because it seems to be at a great discount these days, Andy.
Thank you very much. And I can't tell you what an honor it is for someone to say I have common sense.
Yeah, you don't hear that in Washington probably too terribly much, do you? At the risk of making an issue, a federal issue, out of education, it seems we're being forced, or maybe forced to.
And that's
right.
That has to happen. That has to happen because I get letters and emails, and I got an email last week from a lady that said, I feel so. I'll just put it in my own words. I feel so bereft, so frustrated. I feel that our leaders aren't telling us the truth, and that's what you try to do every day, and that's what I try to do as well. Just tell that truth. Let it out there.
Yeah, let's tell the truth because, on this point, education, I've been loath to make it, as I was saying, a federal issue, but, we do have obligations as citizens and as lawmakers, people in your position certainly, to ensure that the citizens are getting what they're paying for. This ongoing closing of schools, who knew it would last this long? Who knew it would be this big of an issue? And more importantly, who knew it would, at this late date, have so many question marks around it still, Andy?
Yeah, so just a couple of quick points. Number one, education should be, and constitutionally is, a state issue. It really is. That's number one. But over the years, the federal government has tried to federalize it, right? Mm-hmm. So you're right. I think when we were looking at this, when I was looking at this in the spring, and I saw them pulling children out, and I knew, this was going to cause damage to families and children in the United States, and it did. I mean, that's the numbers are in. The American Academy of Pediatricians said already. They said this a month and a half ago. Already, we've seen damage that some of it may be irreparable to these kids.
Yeah.
So what has happened in the interim is this stasis of or lack of preparation to open up, and this fueling of fear. And to the parents' credit, I will tell you, out in my district, I think it's overwhelming positive that, in the positive side, that parents want to get their kids back in school.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I think teachers, I know of at least one school district in my district, where the teachers have said overwhelmingly, we want to go back and teach. So if you've got teachers who don't want to teach, I tell you what, how about matching up students with teachers who want to teach?
Absolutely right. And I'll tell you, moreover, I kind of like, and it is in a way a redounding of locality here. I kind of like the proposal. I haven't studied it in full, but I kind of like the proposal I read about that Rand Paul was proposing, that if these schools won't open up, maybe the federal portion of those dollars should stop going to the districts in general and going to the families to exercise the kinds of choices they need to make for their educational decisions with their children.
That's exactly right. I mean, I introduced legislation several months ago to do that. And so we've got another bill coming out of the Freedom Caucus that's going to mirror Rand's bill.
Good.
Because if you're not teaching in these traditional schools, believe me, there are charters and privates and other educational forms that are out there that do want to teach. They're anxious to teach. And students want to get back.
Mm-hmm.
And I would refer you, if you go to my Facebook page, and if you can stand all the hate comments that I always get, you will see postings from literally dozens upon dozens of people who are parents and grandparents talking about how closing of schools has negatively impacted them and how badly they want to get their children and grandchildren back in schools. I think that is really critical to realize that we're talking real people, real issues, real problems.
Two things on that, Andy. You and I in concert as usual here. But two things on that I think are critically important for people to understand in the policy world, in the world of public policy. One is, the warnings I've been giving had to do with social and mental health. What happens when you, at the snap of the finger, disrupt a child's educational and social life. Turns out, beyond the social, emotional, and psychological damage, there actually is, Alicia Finley in the Wall Street Journal has a good article on it today, there actually is also with those stressors a weakened immune system. So we're compounding the damage by we may be doing more physical, never mind the mental, emotional, intellectual, we may actually be doing more physical damage to these children by keeping them closed, given the stressors and the implications of all that. The second thing, and you know this, but I think more public policy makers need to understand this. We can perhaps deal with the nonsensical shutdowns, lockdowns, and what have yous as adults. We don't like it. We hate it. It's damaging. It's terribly damaging. We can perhaps deal with it as adults. But these young years are critical years you cannot make up for. The developing brain, the adolescent growth and flowering, these are critical years that when you miss them, you don't get to pick up and start over again at 28. This is permanent damage.
Right. We talked about foundation. So learning is linear. Quite frankly, it's a foundational type of process that you go through. You learn step A, and then once you have mastered that concept, you move to B and C, etc. That's really the way most learning education takes place. If you cut out those foundations, you're delaying the progress that should be there. And don't forget that I've heard from parents and grandparents about the distractions. Just talked to someone today whose kid is basically was an honor student, a fine athlete, so now they can't play sports. A young teenage kid can't play sports, can't really interact and have the same kind of classroom experience. And since it's been shut down, they've been spending 6, 8, 10 hours a day on computer games, which really is not what I would say the most informing of pastimes.
No. Screen time was a huge problem, so what we decided to do was make sure they had more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Screen time in children was a huge problem, so we forced them into a situation where they have more. And let me ask you this: from what I know of your district, you're not my representative. Boy, I wish you were. But from what I know of your district, I'm going to guess it has a fairly higher proportion of homeschooling than certain other districts, or perhaps in Arizona or throughout the country. And I'm guessing, you're probably hearing this, I'm guessing you're hearing from a lot of parents, not everyone obviously can do this, that are more and more interested in engaging in homeschooling once they have been so engaged with seeing what is the regular fare for their children. Are you getting an uptick of interest in homeschooling in your district?
Well, first of all, in my district, it's really, really important, and we have probably the most school choice options in the state.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
And what I will tell you, I was trying to give you, because I'm going to give you a data point. The data point is accurate, but I can't remember the source of my data point, but it was reliable. Is the number of people who are filing to go to homeschool is tripled.
Yeah.
It's tripled.
I was going to guess double. I was going to guess at least double.
Yeah. So you're seeing that. But Seth, what's important to understand is my district is more affluent. I mean, people struggle and everything. We have pockets of that, but it's just generally more affluent. But you have districts, whether they may be rural, where there's no access to broadband, there's no access to the Wi-Fi that you need to go virtual. You have wealthier parents and enclaves throughout the country, both from the left and right, who what they're doing is they're calling micro schools.
Yeah.
So they're bringing families together who can afford to hire. Right. Everybody puts in 10, 15 grand. They hire a teacher to come in and teach 15 kids, like the old Little Red Schoolhouse.
Right.
Not everybody has those resources.
Most can't. Most don't. Most don't. Right. Yeah.
And it's a real shame that we're missing out on school and to the detriment of these kids and to the country ultimately.
Let us know what we can do to help propel your legislation on this, Andy.
Thanks